future ask me for some dark ethnic samples, here's exactly what I would send through. So I started this sample off by adding a synth phrase from my upcoming Paranoia Phrases mega pack, which sounds like this. As you can hear, it's pretty much just 1 or 2 notes layered together playing through the whole thing, and you don't really hear in the whole picture of the sample, but you still want to have sounds like this in there that add some depth to your sample. If we would have left that out, it would sound dry and empty. So don't forget your background ambience. We're in the scale of C minor, so next up I laid down this simple piano pattern over 2 octaves and leaving some space in between to make it sound more unique. Every time it hits that last part of the second and the fourth part, it kind of fades down and then hits again. It's just a small little trick that makes it 10 times harder. The piano I used is from Noir Pure, this time the basic Pure preset. What you want to look for is just some dark, simple piano that you don't have to add a lot of effects. Maybe you just cut out some of the lows with an EQ, but that's it. You want fire presets, and Noir Pure definitely has those. I remember when I first made this melody, this was a string, but I later replaced it with a flute. Before we're gonna break it down, I'm just gonna play for you. So it starts on the 5, goes up to the 1. Remember, we're in the scale of C minor, so the 1 is actually right here. And you don't always have to start on the C. You can start on all different notes. So we started on the G, which is the 5, having this upward pattern, and then moving the G to the G sharp to the 6. This gives it a kind of unique movement, and it's ongoing, and that's one trick I always use in my dark stuff. Start on maybe the G and then go to the G sharp for the second bar, or something like this. Just changed it to the G sharp on bar 5 to 8. And important for those counter melodies is that you have some kind of call and response. So simple pattern, structure, we step up, this is the call, and then here's the response. And that just gives the listener an easy point of focus to remember when listening to your samples. Another thing you can see is it's stretched over 2 octaves. So we're pretty much playing this in a C5 octave, and then we're playing in the C4 octave as well. One thing a lot of producers, me myself included, limit ourselves by is just using 1 octave. So we would just play around in this octave right here and not using multiple octaves for one MIDI. And that's pretty much the biggest MIDI secret you can have, is spread it out over multiple octaves. Then I added a halftime on the 1 bar setting, 4.4 milliseconds sustain, and on 27% just to give it some more low end, just to make the sound thicker. And I cut out the lows at around 219 Hz. The most important thing when making ethnic melodies is actually the sounds, having great sounds. And my favorite place recently has been Opus with the East-West libraries, and it's kind of similar to Kontakt. You have a bunch of sounds and libraries in there, you can just pull them up, and what I used is the East-West Silk and a Duduk flute. Now this is the pattern that gives the whole melody a little bit more bounce, a little bit more rhythm, makes it a little bit faster, and it's kind of a dark string, so I'm just gonna play for you and then I'm going to break it down. First thing you can see here instantly is I've done the same as with the flute, alternating between the 5 and the 6 to make it more interesting. Just the MIDI sounds like it's going somewhere. Pretty simple, 2 octaves again, going to the 2, pretty simple melody. When you break it down, nothing really too special about this melody, but it's still super fire because of this alternation between the 5 and the 6. The only effect I added is initial reverse. This is one of my favorite effects plugins, and it only costs like 10 bucks. And what you can do is you can instantly reverse the sound. It's kind of built like halftime, and I put it to like 40% wet, so only 40% of the audio is reversed. If we were to pull that up to 100%, it would sound like this. It's definitely fire too, but I wanted to have that kind of reverse sound, so it's first plays the sound and then it reverses it back. That's what you get when you put it on like 40% mix. The sound I used is also from Opus. It's in the East West Dark Side library under FMEG Enquires and FMEG Dolcheimer. Just having great sounds makes it possible for you to make fire melodies without having to add a ton of effects on every single instrument. And if you don't have the money to buy like all those expensive plugins, just invest in one-shot kits or phrases kits or multi-kits in that sense. You can get a lot of high quality one-shots that fit your production already for like $20-30. That's insane, bro. So yeah, use what you've got. If you can get the plugins, get your hands on the plugins. The plugins are better, of course, but not everyone has the money. Last thing I added was a bass, leaving a little gap in between so it kind of drops every 2 bars. If you just have your bass like this all the time, it kind of gets boring and repetitive, so having those little small gaps and drops in there makes it more interesting. Bass is from Heat Up 3. Under bass section, Urbanese preset, a pretty simple, smooth sub bass. One of the best melody tricks I learned recently is just after you have like the first 2 instances, just add some simple drums, add an 808, add a snare and add a hi-hat. You can either just make it 2-step higher or pull in a quick MIDI and then just build the rest of the sample around having the drums, because it's way easier to build a sample based on this than just based on this. When adding drums, you always have a feeling of what's enough and what's too much for the sample, what will sound good. And for me, especially when I add drums, with the bounce of the drums, I kind of start hearing what patterns and what melodies I want to add. So definitely don't be lazy and just add in a snare, an 808 and a hi-hat, that's it. And I guarantee you that will improve your samples by 20% at least. If you want to know my secret scales and all the music theory you have to know as a music producer to make fire samples, check this video out.